Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting episode of Secrets of the Motorway. I'm still in Yorkshire, they won't let me leave, and this week I've come to Bradford. Bradford was the first city to introduce state-funded school dinners in 1906. It was home to the first and last trolley bus and is also very well known because crime. It also has its own motorway, the Bradford South Radial motorway. Also known as the M606, it's a 3-mile long motorway that links the M62 with Bradford's outer city ring road. There are 3 junctions, 2 of which are at the start and the end of the motorway, meaning there's only really one proper junction. The M606 starts at the Chain Bar Interchange, a roundabout style junction where the A58 and the M62 meet, and it's also where the M606 forks off to the north. There's free flow access to the M606 from the M62 and vice versa, but only in the direction of the westbound M62. Originally, if you wanted to head towards Leeds from the M606, you'd have needed to use the roundabout junction itself, and over the years that's contributed to quite a few traffic problems. The solution, or should I say attempt at a solution, came about as part of a grander scheme in 2008 where they installed an additional 1.7-mile lane on the approach to the Chain Bar Interchange. This new lane would filter through to the M62 eastbound, allowing traffic to bypass the roundabout, and claims were made that it would save you 6 to 8 minutes on your journey. There is a catch though. In order to use this lane, you need to be driving a high-occupancy vehicle. What's a high-occupancy vehicle, I hear you ask? Well, it's just a fancy way of saying car share. If you're driving any vehicle that's got 1 or more passengers, then congratulations, you're awarded with the privilege of using this lane. But hold on just for a moment there. In 2019, Highways England put forward proposals to permanently remove the restrictions on the £4 million high-occupancy vehicle lane. These proposals were accepted and they set about removing said restrictions. The reasons given for wanting to remove the restrictions and high-occupancy vehicle lane were the exact same reasons given for wanting to install it in the first place, to ease congestion. The bottom line was that after all of that money had been spent, it didn't work, and if anything, made matters worse. Today, the lane is open to all traffic without any restrictions, and yes, I'm in the studio because I forgot to film this bit. On with the show. As you join the M606 from the M62, you'll pass under a bridge that overlooks the interchange. It's clearly an old railway bridge, and indeed if we follow it along for a short distance, we find another bridge called Snelson's Bridge. It sits on the old Mirfield and Lowmore Railway, which was opened in 1848 by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. The old railway is now a public path and cycleway, and if we continue to follow it along, we find a new build estate just on the other side of Whitechapel Road. Back in the 1800s, instead of houses, we'd have found sidings that served the Flat Lane Chemical Works, a reminder of which still exists today in the gasometer found just by Whitechapel Road. Back to the motorway, and the M606 opened in 1973, and a short while later in 1974, problems would begin to arise by way of holes appearing in the newly built carriageway. The motorway was closed, and on closer inspection it was discovered that they'd built the M606 across some old mines and coal pits, and the old mine shafts were causing the road to subside. The old mine shafts were promptly filled and capped off, with the motorway reopening shortly after, and the problem's never arisen since. The site of one old coal pit can be found on the corner of the M606 and the M62. The land was then later used to construct a water treatment works, however that's since closed, and whilst it sat abandoned for quite a few years, it's now been demolished and plans are underway to construct a large commercial park. A short distance up from the Chain Bar Interchange is where we find Oakenshaw Church, an impressive structure that was built in 1889, and it's become somewhat of a local landmark when driving on the M606. The church's construction was partly funded by the Lowmore Iron Company, who are based a few miles from here. Some details I've found is that their foundry was founded in 1791, and at one point they were the largest ironworks in Yorkshire. The first junction, or should I say the only proper junction on the M606, is found pretty much halfway up the motorway. It was built to serve the nearby trading estate, and accordingly, when on the motorway, the signs only make mention of a trading estate. They make no mention of towns or places that you can get to, so it seems this junction really was designed with the trading estate in mind. You might notice that the junction's missing one of its slip roads, and I agree, it seems to be missing the northbound joining slip road. This forces any northbound traffic from the trading estate to use a smaller local road that runs parallel to the M606. Not a great idea by today's standards, but there is actually an explanation as to why it's arranged like this. We need to look back to those crazy road planning days of the late 60s. The M606 was originally planned to extend further into the centre of Bradford. We're going to look at the details of that a little bit later on, but for now all we need to know is that the M606 originally was supposed to be longer, have more junctions and finish in the city centre. When planning and building the junctions, they would leave out the northbound slip roads to avoid local traffic joining the motorway and using it as quick access to the city centre. Not a massive problem at face value, but over time this would lead to greater congestion on the motorway and it wouldn't serve its purpose. Junction 2 then offers an example of this plan being put into practice, but today perhaps it doesn't really make all that much sense. Speaking of not making a lot of sense, Junction 3 on the M606 is completely bizarre, but much like earlier, looking at the original plans for the M606 gives us our explanation. The idea was that the M606 would actually continue and link up with the A650 in Bradford city centre. Looking at the A650 today, and if you've ever wondered why it's got this odd arrangement up by Croft Street, it's because it was built to accommodate a connection from the M606. Back to Junction 3, and if we look at an old map, we can see what the original idea was. The problem was, to extend the motorway into the city centre would have involved the destruction and demolition of many homes and businesses. So in the end, the entire project was cancelled. Junction 3, however, had already been built, along with a section of single carriageway, both awaiting an extension to the north that would never come. For a while, all the traffic was directed off at Junction 3 via the slip roads, and the short section of carriageway they'd already been built was coned off. Upon realising that the motorway extension into Bradford was never going to happen, they made use of what they'd already built and installed a mini roundabout at the end of the motorway before opening it up to traffic. This arrangement lasted until 2004, by which time I think everybody had had enough. It was a stupid idea in the first place to install a mini roundabout at the end of a motorway, and the congestion in the area had become a massive problem. They opted to build a second carriageway alongside the existing one, effectively finishing off the M606 properly, and that bastard mini roundabout was removed. They replaced the mini roundabouts with a set of traffic lights right at the end of a motorway. Awesome! Another thing to look out for at Junction 3 is the tunnel shaft found on the southbound slip road. The tunnel shaft was constructed as part of the bowling tunnel in 1850, and it serves the still in use Halifax to Bradford railway line. It's almost a mile long at 0.93 miles, and Junction 3 of the M606 sits right on top of it. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there's a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That'd be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you next time for another exciting episode of Secrets of the Motorway. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
We're the Bantams, pride of Yorkshire. In our hearts we always stand together. Here we go now, making history. Hold your head up, 'cause this is what we sing. Midland Road.